Well, good evening, councillors, and welcome to the meeting, the Audit and Governance Committee, which is being undertaken virtually in accordance with recently enacted government regulations during the current coronavirus pandemic. Before we start the meeting, can I please remind all members of the following? Please ensure you mute your microphones when not speaking. Remain focused on the topic being discussed. Try to avoid repeating points that have already been made. Avoid interrupting other councillors and respect the position of the chair. Please remember that this meeting is being broadcast in the normal way by Facebook Live, and it's important, therefore, that members are aware that the public can hear what is being said and decided on, and that the public can see councillors as well. Please, therefore, take care to prevent any background distractions. Well, with these matters in mind, can I call on Mark Devin to do a roll call of all officers and councillors to ascertain who's in attendance, please?
Thank you, Chair. Could I ask councillors in attendance to please state that you're present when I call your name?
Yeah.
Councillor Wardle.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Atkinson.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Foggin.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Hannaford. I don't believe he's arrived yet. Councillor David Henson.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Yolanda Henson.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb. I don't believe he's here. Councillor Michael Mitchell.
Present.
Thank you. I've had apologies from Councillor Patterson. Councillor Sheldon.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Warwick.
Present, yeah.
Thank you. I'll also do a roll call for officers in attendance. So I'll start with the Deputy Chief Finance Officer, Michelle White.
Present.
Thank you. The Corporate Manager of Democratic and Civic Support, John Street.
Present.
Thank you. Audit Manager, Helen Kelvey.
Present.
Thank you. We also have in attendance Jackson Murray from Grant Thornton, and Democratic Services Officers, myself, Sharon Sisson and Howard Bassett also in attendance, and I can confirm, Chair, we are quorate to proceed.
Thank you, Mark. Right, well, thank you, members, for that. The first item on the agenda this evening is apologies, and I think there's Councillor Patterson. Is there anyone else at all? No.
We haven't had Councillors Lamb or Hannaford arrive, but they may be running late, Chair.
Okay, fair enough. Right, thank you. The next item on business, the item 2, the minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of March. As I understand it, there are some amendments, Sharon, aren't there?
Yes, Chair. I just had information on page 3 of your agenda, essentially in minute 9, the external audit plan. Third bullet point, to insert the word pension, pension fund, to make it clearer. In the second set of bullet points and the first bullet point, the insertion of the word carry out an assessment of the actuarial. And then in minute 10, just a clarification that the annual audit letter was presented for the period 2018 and not 1920 as stated. And I hope you would accept those, Chair.
Yes, I mean, they're factual amendments, I think, so that they're acceptable. Does the committee agree to those amendments?
Aye.
Thank you.
Yeah. Seconded.
Okay, no objections, thank you. Members have any other amendments to the minutes, please? No other amendments in that case. I look forward to signing the minutes at a future occasion. So the next item on the agenda is item 3, declaration of interest. If members of any disclosable pecuniary interest relate to business on the agenda and have not already been included in the register of interest, to declare them before any discussion takes place on the item. The next item of business is item 4, the Local Government Access to Information Act 1985, for the exclusion of the press and the public. Well, as there are no part 2 items on the agenda, that is only really for noting. So we can now take item 5, which is the External Audit Progress Report. And can I ask our representative Jackson Murray, who's the engagement lead from the City Council's external auditor, Grant Thornton, to present the report?
Yeah,
Jackson, it's over to you.
Thanks very much, Chair, and hello to everyone. So on the agenda today in front of you is one of our normal update reports. Now, given that it's July, in a normal financial year, we would be hoping to be discussing the outcomes of the 2019-20 financial statements audit, as I'll come on to momentarily. Due to coronavirus, COVID-19, legislation has been enacted to change the national timetable for financial reporting. So the report in front of you today seeks to update you on some of the key changes and key issues that have arisen following the last audit committee in March 2020. So on page 12 of the agenda document, page 4 of our report, is to say, so subsequent to the March 2020 audit committee, we've undertaken our planning and interim audit, and later in the report I'll touch on some of the key issues highlighted as a result of that. And we also discussed and issued our audit plan at the March 2020 audit committee. Subsequent to that, we issued an addendum to that plan on the 27th of April 2020 to include an additional financial statements significant risk regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. And I understand that that's been circulated to members. Again, that's a risk that we've identified at all of our local government audits across the country. And similarly, as I mentioned, the Accounts and Audit Coronavirus Amendment Regulations 2020 were passed, which means that the publication date for final accounts moves from the end of July to the end of November 2020 for all local authorities. The public inspection period must begin on or before the first working day of September 2020, and draft accounts must be approved by the 31st of August 2020, whereas previously that deadline was the 31st of May 2020. So we continue to liaise with the Section 151 officer and other key finance staff around the production of the draft financial statements for 2019-20 and also our audit. In terms of our value for money responsibilities, we've also assessed whether there are any additional significant risks arising from the COVID-19 pandemic and haven't identified any additional risks in relation to value for money. The only other point I wanted to draw out on value for money is that the National Audit Office are currently consulting on the auditor guidance notes for the new Code of Audit Practice, which will be applicable for 2021 and onwards, which is looking to include significant changes to our work on value for money. So 2019-20 is the last year under the current arrangements. This time next year, we'll be discussing value for money under new arrangements, which are currently being consulted on by the National Audit Office. Over the page on page 13, other areas of work that we complete as your external auditor include a review of your housing benefits subsidy claim. So then the deadline for that is usually the end of November. Again, due to COVID, the deadline nationally for that has been moved to the 31st of January 2021. And just to say, your offices attended our financial reporting workshop in February 2020 in advance of COVID-19, but also in advance of the close down of the 2019-20 financial statements. And officers were also invited to a workshop we ran at the beginning of this week, looking at specific financial reporting issues in relation to COVID-19. I won't touch on the audit deliverables page of our report, that's fairly self-explanatory. The next couple of pages, so pages 15 and 16, set out some of the results of our interim work that was undertaken subsequent to the last audit committee. So we've begun work in a number of areas in relation to our audit. We're still awaiting the Council's commentary on its overall control environment. So we can't fully conclude on the Council's control environment, but no issues have been identified to date. Similarly, when we look at the Council's financial systems, some of the processes and controls only occur at year end. And so whilst we've looked at those that we're able to look at that are undertaken throughout the year. We need to complete that work in our final visit. But again, to date, there's no control weaknesses to bring to the committee's attention. Couple of final points. The emerging accounting arrangements in our audit plan, we highlighted a new accounting standard in respect of leases, IFRS 16. Due to COVID, sorry to keep saying that word, but due to COVID, that has been the implementation of that standard has been delayed, deferred until at least 21-22. And normally, what we would do at our interim visit is early substantive testing. During our interim audit, that was actually during the initial stages of government-imposed lockdown, and due to that fact, and clearly council officers were focusing on higher priority areas rightly during that period, we didn't undertake early substantive testing as we normally may have done. That means we will be doing that as part of our final audit. And again, as I've touched on earlier, the deadlines and timetables for that audit have been extended nationally in response to those specific issues. That's all I was going to say on our report. It's a fairly short one, but there's a number of key updates there from the last audit committee. Just I wanted to bring to your attention. Happy to take any questions.
Well, thank you very much, Jackson, for that. Members, do you have any questions? Any questions?
No, not seeing any show of hands, Chair.
No? Okay. Well, in that case, I think we note the report and thank you for that, for presenting it.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you the next time. Cheers.
Thanks. I'll stick around for the rest of the committee as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, so next item is number 6, the annual governance statement 2019 and 20. Well, Helen Kelvey, our audit manager, I think is going to present this report. Helen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm presenting this report on behalf of Dave Hodgson tonight, who can't be with us. So the production of the annual governance statement is a statutory requirement which reviews any significant issues that's raised throughout the year in respect of corporate governance, which once signed off will form part of the council's statement of accounts. I'd just like to draw members' attention really to the key issues which are identified on page 31, I think it is, of your pack. And members note that we have 4 new significant issues arising in this year, 3 of which do relate to the COVID pandemic, that word again, I'm afraid. So our response to that and the actions taken to address them are noted in the summary of actions to be taken column. As per normal, an update of the key issues will be provided to this committee quarterly throughout the next financial year as part of our internal audit progress report. I don't intend to say anything further on that, but I'm happy to take any questions if members have any.
Okay, Helen, thank you for that. Members, any questions?
A question from Councillor Michael Mitchell, Chair.
Michael Mitchell, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just really points of information or clarification. Just 2 really. First one's on page 5 or page 27 of the report, where you're in discussions or working with Zurich to divide our risk register into a corporate risk and operational risk. I think I'm clear about the concept behind it. It's clear that we now have details of our corporate risk register. Who holds the operational risk registers and are they publicly available?
Thank you. Yes, so the corporate risk register, as you rightly say, is reviewed by this committee. The operational risk registers are held by the individual services, and they're part of the service plans for each service, and that is not actually publicly published. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, yes, thank you. And the second point is on page 28. It's just really a bit of information where you're talking about corporate complaints, and we had 101 corporate complaints. What is distinct for a layperson in a corporate customer complaint? That's distinct from a member of the general public.
Sorry, could you repeat that again?
Yeah. On page 28 of the report, it says in 2019-20, the council responded to 100 corporate customer complaints. All complaints were responded to, etc., etc. And I'm just wondering what defines a corporate customer complaint?
It will be any member of the public making a complaint.
So it's not an organisation; it's individual,
No.
individuals, or yes.
Yes, it's individuals.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Any further questions? No? Okay, well, we have to have a roll call on this matter. So we've got the two recommendations here. Right, that's gone again. Okay, so Mark, do you want to do a roll call on the votes here, please?
Thank you, Chair. Okay, councillors, please state if you're for, against, or abstaining on the recommendations, please, when I call your name. So starting in alphabetical order, Councillor Atkinson.
For.
Councillor Foggin.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Hannaford.
For.
Thank you. Councillor David Henson. Councillor David Henson.
Sorry,
Councillor
we were, yeah, both of us for.
Me out.
Oh, thank you. Councillor Mrs Henson as well, was that for?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Michael Mitchell.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Sheldon. Was that for, sorry?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Warwick.
For.
For. Thank you. That's a unanimous vote, Chair, in favour, and the recommendations have been carried.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. Right, we proceed to item 7, the annual internal audit progress report 2019 and 20. So Helen Kelvey, Audit Manager, present this one, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I'd like to present members with our annual audit report for the year ended March 2020. So as a result of the committee structure and the arrangement of the meetings, we are actually working over 3 months in arrears, and members will appreciate that quite a lot has happened since that time. You'll see from our report that some work in relation to the audit plan for 1920 has been put on hold as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Predominantly that was because services were being required to respond to the situation on a daily basis, and so we felt that we should hold off from finalising some of our work in order not to put additional pressure on the already stretched services. So as I say, you will see with the update for our progress against our plan, you will see that some of the work is still outstanding, and that will be picked up later in the year. We will also be issuing a full report on the impact of the virus on our internal audit service, and the annual audit plan for this financial year will be provided at the next meeting, as recovery work and response work is still ongoing. So moving to our annual report, it can be found at Appendix A. I just like to draw members' attention really to the overall audit opinion, which can be found in section 2. This provides this section provides a summary of the assurance provided by the internal audit service with a comparison to last year, which shows an overall increase in the percentage of limited assurance rating reports that we actually issued. But to provide context to members, that was only in relation to one report. So managers' responses to findings throughout the year was positive, and there were no instances where remedial action was not agreed by management. And our overall opinion, which can be seen at point 2.5, is that we consider that the key systems are operating satisfactorily and that there were no fundamental breakdowns of control resulting in material discrepancy.
Okay.
As already discussed in our report on the annual governance statement, there are 6 key issues on the annual governance statement, 4 of which relate to this year. We've actually already discussed them, so I don't actually intend to go into further detail on that. Section 4 of our report provides progress against the audit plan and the summary of all the audit reports that we've actually undertaken throughout the year. Members will see that the Agile and Flexible project that the Council implemented during last year has resulted in a significant overspend on our contingency time. This is basically because the whole team were required to attend a number of workshops and training sessions, which actually has seen resulted in a fall in our productive time.
Okay.
Moving on to section 5, which actually sees a summary of the investigation work that we've carried out throughout the year. In summary, there was an increase in the number of reports from members of the public. That was we saw an increase of 23%. All reports were investigated either by ourselves or by the relevant service. And there were no concerns raised under the whistleblowing policy, which we're required to report to this committee.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on to section 6, which deals with our quality assurance and improvement programme. As you can see from that, the results of our performance measures and customer satisfaction surveys are shown. And I just would like to say to report to the committee that we were assessed in January 2020 on our compliance with the public sector internal audit standards. We're required to have an external inspection undertaken every 5 years. And I'm pleased to report that we were judged that we are a service that has charter policies and processes that are in conformance to the standard. That's all I'd like to say on that report. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Helen, for that. Any questions, please?
Councillor Atkinson, Chair.
Councillor Atkinson?
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to ask, I can see that you deferred the emergency business continuity. But I just wondered if, in view of what's happened, whether we should be cracking on with that, really. Isn't it? You've got here. Sorry, it's on page 51. It's deferred to next year due to work being undertaken under risk management, which will lead to services compiling business continuity plans. I just wondered if we shouldn't be fast tracking that due to all the different arrangements in the organisation, home working and continuity. That's all.
Absolutely, I would agree with you. Sorry, Chair.
Yeah, that's please. Yeah.
So why are you deferred then? Sorry.
So what actually happened is at the point in January of this year, we were undertaking a number of workshops with our insurers under risk management with all the service leads. And as part of that project, the service leads were required to start putting together their business continuity plans. With the advent of COVID, this was accelerated somewhat, and business continuity plans were required to be put together somewhat faster than we originally thought. And all services did provide a business continuity plan by the end of March. And obviously, they've been working to those plans since the advent of COVID. The reason that we haven't undertaken that work in the year is obviously that the process has moved on somewhat, and we will have time. We have, in fact, got time this year to actually look at those business continuity plans, how well they worked, and obviously to do a review and feedback on that process. So we will be doing some business continuity work. It will just be undertaken in this year.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions on the report, please? No. In that case, can we have an indication, please, that you note the report?
Agreed.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you, Helen, for that. Right, we now move on to item 8, Model Member Code of Conduct, to be presented by John Street, the Corporate Manager, Democratic and Civic Support on the City Council. John.
Thank you, Chair. As councillors will know, the current Code of Conduct is contained within the Constitution and is very much based on the previous or existing Model Code of Conduct at the moment. And all members will be aware that they receive, as part of their welcome pack to the City Council, the copy of the Code of Conduct itself, and they agree to follow it when they sign their Declaration of Acceptance of Office. What you have in front of you now is a report which backs up the draft new Model Code of Conduct, which has been presented for consultation by the Local Government Association, with comments being due back to them by the 17th of August, not the 13th as indicated in the report. And there are online tools for members and officers to make comments, although what we're suggesting here is that there be a collaborative response on behalf of the Council to the draft Model Code. As can be seen in paragraph 8.11 of the report, officers' views are that the detail contained within the new Model Code of Conduct not only makes it clearer to all concerned as to the conduct expected of councillors, but also details what actions could be taken against councillors if they are found to breach the code. Again, this level of detail is not contained in the current adopted code. This, we feel, adds to the Council's transparency agenda from an officer's point of view. So views are now sought as to what comments there may well be going forward for the draft model. And I'd also like to point out that the one notable extension to the existing Code of Conduct from the existing model, is that the Council currently asks that all councillors who declare an interest under a Part 2 Declaration of Interest also, having done so, leave the meeting and do not vote in that process. All members will be aware of that. So it means that any interest is declared and leave the meeting. And it would be the monitoring officer's intention to seek council's approval to extend that if and when we adopt the new Code of Conduct. So I'm happy here this evening to answer any questions that the members may have, and to also to receive any comments which could be fed back into the consultation exercise. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John. All right. Any comments on this item, please?
Councillor Hannaford, then Councillor, is it Mrs. Henson? Does that hand up?
Yes. Yes. Sorry, it's my hand.
Okay.
Yeah,
Councillor
we're not holding
Hannaford.
hands.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome this report and its inclusion and its enhancement of what we have at the moment. But I'd like to go to section 8 and 8.7, and I quote, treating other councillors and members of the public with civility, and treating council employees and representatives of partner organisations and those volunteering for the council with civility and respecting the role that they play, and not bullying and harassing any person. Now, the overwhelming majority of city councillors do not behave in that way, but one or two individuals do quite often behave in that way, but nothing ever really seems to be done about it. So my question to you, John, and others is, now we're moving into this enhanced mode of conduct. Should that happen in future, will we expect more sort of rigorous action to deal with it? Because certainly over the past couple of years, I've been very unhappy with some of the behaviour of one or two members of the council.
Okay, thank you for that.
Chair, would you like to respond to the questions
Yes,
as they
please.
arise?
Yes, I think so. Yes.
Councillor Hannaford, of course, Councillor Hannaford, I agree, and you'll also be aware that there are on occasions work behind the scenes, shall we say, out of the public eye to try and speak to those councillors who may well put the council into that position and other councillors into that position as well. There are also occasions when formal complaints are taken up, that they are investigated by the monitoring officer and dealt with accordingly. But I think by having this in more detail in the new model code of conduct, that raises the awareness of it again and reminds everybody of the respect that they should have for everybody involved in the public office.
Thank you.
Chair, could I just very quickly come back, if I may?
Please, please.
I do welcome that, John, and if I can go a bit further, I think sometimes it gets written off. Oh, it's just so and so. That's the way that they behave, and I don't think that's good enough. And I also think we need to explore the issues around perhaps mental health and other complex needs, because councillors obviously have those issues as well sometimes, and sometimes it's very difficult to deal with a situation when perhaps it's meshed into the members' mental health issues or whatever, and how far you make allowances for that at the same time maintaining a proper professional relationship. And again, I think that is something that's come up again recently, and I think it's a very difficult thing to manage. But I do accept you're doing work behind the scenes, but I have had some concerns over the past couple of years, more than I've had for a long time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Right, who's next, please?
Councillor Mrs. Henson.
Mrs. Henson.
Thank you. I would support Hannaford all the way along, but what I was going to ask is, has there been a large take-up on because has all the councillors seen the new code? John, important that they are aware that there is a new code of conduct, and it should be read quite thoroughly. And I think a lot of new code councillors don't. And I think they're floating, or we all don't. I mean, I'm not for one word for word sort of thing, but I would just hope that people do read and just put in a comment of something. Do they agree or don't agree, or would they like to see a change? And I wonder if there is a good support or take up on this.
Chair, I thank the Deputy Lord Mayor for that. The report has been circulated to all members as part of the Audit and Governance Committee papers, but we can probably all say we're not sure that really reaches all councillors at all of the times, especially after a long council meeting last night. So what I will do is I'll give an indication that I'll circulate this to all councillors, making them aware of the fact that there is a new model code of conduct out here, that if they wish to make comments, they could do so to me in the first instance, but if they wish to make some individually through the various mechanisms there are as well, we can do that. But obviously set a time frame upon that so that we actually meet the deadline, so there is a corporate response going back. And you'll see that the recommendation within the paper itself is that any corporate response that goes back be delegated to the City Solicitor in consultation with the chair of this committee for forwarding on.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Right, who was next, please? Next question.
I wasn't sure, Councillor Foggin, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did. I was actually going to say the same as what Yolanda said. I think it would be a good idea to actually let all members have a look through it. I mean, I welcome it personally, but I think all members should have a look.
Yes. Right, okay, unless there's any further questions.
Sorry, Chair, Councillor Atkinson, then Councillor Mitchell.
Ah, right, okay, Councillor Atkinson.
Thank you. This concerns paragraph 8, where it says you should not take advantage of these opportunities to further private interests. And I can't see anywhere in it where there is a definition of private interests. So I just wonder if, unless I've missed it, John, I just wonder if there's going to be any guidance attached to this, so that people know. In other codes of conduct I'm familiar with, it specifies that this not just your own private interests, but those of your husband, wife, you know, your nearest and dearest, your closest friend, you know, your mother, your father, all of those things, so that people realise that it's not just, you know, them personally. And isn't it going to be the case that when a new code of conduct comes out, we will have to sign a copy that we have received and read it in any event, and follow and receive a copy of any guidance that may be coming out?
Indeed, Chair, that will be the case. If and when the Council decides to adopt a new code of conduct, all councillors will be expected to sign up to it at that point. There is also, as all councillors are aware, there's an annual requirement on all councillors to renew or at least review their declarations of interest. And on that declaration of interest form is a little more detail about what the declarations are, or what the interests are referred to, as Councillor Atkinson's just spoken about. But there is a little detail. It's not that much the detail that Councillor Atkinson mentioned there within the appendices on page 72 of the report, which says that there is a small definition on paragraph 7 there about what a interest is. But I do take the point that we extend it quite considerably, as is the requirement of the Act, to ensure that interest not only affect the council themselves, but also their spouse or anyone else who lives with them as per husband and wife. So we will continue to do that, as is the requirement anyway.
I would have thought that came into it anyway.
Right, thank you for that.
Councillor Mitchell, Chair.
Councillor Mitchell.
Just a quick question to John. When do you anticipate this model code of conduct will be in a position for us to adopt, if we wish to adopt it?
Well, this, if I may, Chair, this is but a draft model code for consultation from the Local Government Association at the moment. I would suggest that as and when the finalised version of the model code of conduct is approved by the Local Government Association, it will then come back to the council, and through this or council itself council itself for final and formal approval. I can't put a time frame on when the Local Government Association will consider this, bearing in mind all the other issues that local government is dealing with at the moment. I won't say the horrible C word, but I can't put a time frame on that at the moment, I'm afraid. But we will bring it back as soon as it comes back to us in a finalised form.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay. So the formal position is we note this report. Is that agreed, please? Is that agreed? Is it? Can I just have a show of hands that it's noted? Yeah, thank you.
Chair, it's not actually for noting the report. It's actually to delegate authority to yourself and the City Solicitor to put forward the council's, well, as detailed in paragraph 2.1, the comments on behalf of the council. So it's for you to do that in consultation with BARM at the end of the day, ahead of the consultation deadline of the 17th of August.
Okay, right. Thank you for that, John. Right, so we go forward on that basis. Is that agreed? Yes? Yes, thank you. Right. So, now to item 9, the review of the Corporate Governance Risk Register. Now, Helen Kelvey, Audit Manager, to present this one, please.
Thank you, Chair. So responsibility for facilitating the Corporate Risk Register has passed recently from executive support to internal audit. So this is the first time we've presented it to this committee. So the Corporate Risk Register is attached as an appendix to this report. I'd just like to highlight the 2 issues arising from the report. First being that there is now a new risk, risk number 13, which is has been added by our SMB, and that is the inability to manage and respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. And also we have an updated risk, which is risk number 12, which is maintaining the financial stability of the council. And the residual risk scoring has been increased by Dave, the Chief Financial Officer, from a 9, i.e. a medium, to a 12, which is a high, as a result of the COVID-19. So the current medium-term financial plan requires £5.8 million worth of reductions to balance as a result of the projections based on lower business rates, receipts and increased costs. I'm not sure that I can answer any questions, but what I will do is I'm happy to take away any questions away and get the response back to this committee as soon as possible.
Thank you. Any questions, please?
We have a question from Councillor Mitchell and Councillor Hannaford, Chair.
Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you. I'm just intrigued to know with the register, each issue is numbered. Is there any rank ordering within this system, or do you intend to rank order, or is it just a random list? Not random list, but a random numbering system rather than sort of rank ordering by concern or issue?
No, there is no rank ordering. It is literally as and when a new risk comes on, it will come onto the end of the list.
So we read nothing into the numbering, the rank order numbering at all?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next question, I think, Councillor Hannaford.
That's great, Chair.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Chair. 2 points. Obviously, the new item on the risk register is the COVID-19 pandemic. What is the general view of that risk? Should we, like most other parts of the world, move into a second wave of the pandemic? Secondly, there's a separate bullet point in regard to closure of the Civic Centre. Do we have some sort of indication in terms of, from a staff and member point of view, about COVID proofing the Civic Centre as a workplace, in terms of large open plan offices? Yes, might comply with social distancing, but if the distancing rules change again, would we look to screening some of it rather than, or just not reopening it again? It's really just to get a sort of feeling of, from that side of things, and also, the benefits perhaps of how we've been working. Will we continue those possibly into the future, working from home? I think a lot, wearing with my other hat, a lot of people at the county council are looking at that actively now. And how does that work at the city council? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I can respond in terms of going forward and the working from home issue. That is, staff at the moment have been given an instruction that things will continue as is, i.e. that we will continue to work from home for the foreseeable future. And I believe that there will be some intent that will, as I say, continue for a much longer period. I don't know whether John Street could give some more information regarding the Civic Centre and how things are working at the Civic Centre, John?
Of course I can, Chair, and thank you, Helen. We have put in place already hand sanitisers throughout the building at all the access entrances to it. There are, as Helen's already mentioned, there are a minimal number of staff within the building itself at any one time now. And I think I saw a statistic the other day that there is something in the region of about 87% of Exeter City Council staff are now home working, compared to where it was beforehand. And I know when I was in yesterday in the Civic Centre myself, on the 4th floor where we now occupy some desks, or did occupy some desks, there was only 4 people on that floor working that day, where there were previously workspaces for up to about 60. Councillor Hannaford, we're constantly reviewing what the government give us in guidance and changing the procedures as we go through. But there has been a report which went to SMB to instigate some of the first instances, such as one-way systems to go around the actual floors themselves, keep left when we go up and down the stairs so you minimise the distance between yourself and others. We've actually just introduced a no entry along the footbridge between the two buildings, because that takes you into the police accommodation, and of course the police are a little bit more vulnerable, shall we say, to the COVID requirements than ourselves. So we're just trying to protect ourselves and themselves a little more as well. We are in the process of getting some screens to go into the customer service centre as well. So when that opens up fully again to only housing and homelessness customers, as it will be, there will be at least a protective screen between the customer and the member of staff as well at that time. And to finish off with Helen's point about working from home a little more, there is an opportunity for staff to request additional IT equipment to make it more comfortable for them to work from home going forward. And I think there is in excess of 100 people have taken up that opportunity at the moment to do so. And that means that the IT equipment has now been taken off those desks that we've painstakingly put into the Civic Centre over the last 12 months to get into this situation, which by its very nature helps socially distance the workspace a little more than it was beforehand. So I hope that gives a little bit more of an update on the work within the Civic Centre.
Yes, thank you for that. Right. Any further questions on this item?
Yes, I've got Councillor Henson and Councillor Atkinson, Chair.
Councillor Henson.
Councillor Henson, you're still on mute.
Right. Who was the other speaker? Well,
Councillor Atkinson, Chair.
Councillor Atkinson, do you want to?
Okay, right. While she's struggling, I'm happy to continue. I'm talking about risk number 9, which I'm very pleased to see. And it does say the mitigation taken if we don't succeed in getting the Greater Exeter strategic plan approved. So as we've got Plan B, which is alongside it, the local plan. But I'm just want to know whether that is going to be running consecutively. It's not proposed to get to 2023 and then go for Plan B. You just give me reassurance on the on that mitigation. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Is anyone able to throw some light on that?
Chair, I don't think that I can provide an answer to that, but I'm happy to go away and get a response to that, and I will circulate it to the rest of the committee.
Thank you. Okay, have we got Councillor Henson?
Yes, I'm
okay.
back. I felt like, yes, Minister, then. I just would like to ask John Street, just where he was explaining all the problems and the staff we have and the new system they can. Is there a time that's coming where individuals could ask for money for using their homes, because they're using their homes as offices? And there is a foreseeable time that I see this could happen if we continue like this. And I just asked if John Street foresees this or foresees something like this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. That's a matter which has been discussed on numerous occasions, I understand, by the Strategic Management Board and will be continually reviewed. But the staff are also being pointed in the direction of potential taxability to reclaim some of the costs that there are for some of the expenses that they may well be incurring over and above what they had done beforehand for heating, lighting, etc. But of course, it is also a circle in the other direction, that there are a number of staff who will no longer now be travelling into the Civic Centre, so they will be potentially saving time and money for not that commute, and also help with the council's green travel agenda that there is as well. So it's a circle which is constantly being looked at, but I understand at the moment that there is no intention for staff costs to be able to be reclaimed at the moment.
Thank you, John. Before you think, I would like to, before we do switch off, I'd like to have a talk while you're there. All right, when we switch off to the public, please.
With me, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Yes.
Okay, I'll stay behind after. Thank you.
Put your hand up, John.
Right. Any further questions on this item, please? Right, so I think the position is, as we've reviewed this register, do we now note it? So we note this report, yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, well, I think that brings us to the end of the meeting. And so the next meeting is the 16th September 2020 at 5:30. Thanks very much for everyone for making this meeting possible and for attending. And I wish you a pleasant rest of the evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony.